Hey guys, I want to talk about marriage for a few minutes. I know that I've had a couple recent questions or comments on the YouTube channel asking some questions about marriage or making some different connections or comments in one way or another, and I wanted to address a couple different things. Of course, it's a broad topic that we could spend a lot of time talking about, but I think the first, there are a couple major things that we need to have a quick discussion about. First off, the word marriage does not appear in Scripture. It's not in the Greek. It's not in the Hebrew. What we do find in Scripture over and over, for example, in the Greek, is the word lachak, which means to take, to seize, to lay hold of, and essentially it is. Has to do with a man taking a woman. The word wife isn't in Scripture either. It's a woman. So, Abraham took Sarah, and she became his woman. And that's the proper way that Scripture explains it, the proper way that Scripture describes it. So often, marriage or the idea of marriage is portrayed in the terms and the understanding of Western civilization, which most of Western civilization, while it claims to be somewhat Judeo-Christian or something of this sort, the real fact is it's rooted in Greco-Roman law, Greco-Romanism, and Greco-Roman law allowed a man to have one woman legally for his heritable to create heritable offspring or to produce heritable offspring, but he was allowed to have, sexual relations with as many other people as he wanted, with anywhere from boys and men to temple prostitutes to, other what have you. That's what was allowed, and that's almost what we see in the church today, where you got your wife, but we're gonna wink at, or we're just gonna turn our head when anything else is involved, prostitution or a side chick or whatever you want to call it. So what we see today that's called traditional marriage is actually a Greco-Roman institution. Now, most marriages are given their legality according to the culture by the state. That's called a marriage license, and typically you ask the state for permission to get married, and they give you permission, and they give you a marriage license or a marriage certificate. And what that does, though, is it then gives them authority to come in and place themselves, stick their fingers into your marriage should anything go south. Or it gives them the ability to come in and embolden that woman against the man, because it's actually profitable for the state, for the legal system, and for the woman to stand up and take everything from the man, as well as his children. Okay, so that we need to be clear that scripturally, there's no such thing as a marriage license. In fact, I think the research will show that marriage licenses were instituted in this country as a means of trying to get eyes on who was getting married in an effort to prevent any interracial marriage. I think that was part of the original intent, if I'm not mistaken, for marriage licenses. But then, of course, the legal system and divorce law and everything else got in there, and all of that gave lots of profits to the state and lots of profits to attorneys in the legal system. Okay, so marriage license is not necessary for a man to take a woman. It just isn't. It's nowhere in Scripture. But something else is not necessary. You don't need a pastor, priest, rabbi, judge, magistrate, anybody else to be involved. The agreement for taking a woman is actually between three parties. You've got the Almighty, you've got the man that's taking the wife, or taking the woman, and then you have the woman's cover. Okay, she's not technically involved in the discussion. Now, I think there's wisdom in having her opinion and not necessarily having her connected with somebody she doesn't care about or anything of that sort. But the major point that I want to make is that she's not even involved in the discussion. The discussion is between her father, or whoever her covering is, and the man that's going to take her, and the Almighty. That's where the agreements are. Okay? So when a pastor stands up in front of a congregation and he does the I do's and the ominous dominuses and whatever he does, and then he says, I now pronounce you man and wife, or he says, by the power vested in me, I now pronounce you. He's not talking about any power vested in him by God. Nowhere does it say that God gives him that authority. He doesn't, okay? It's not there. The authority that he has is the authority that he gets from the state. And when he says, by the power vested in me, it's because he's acting as an agent of the state in order to insert the state into that marriage, and doing so through the marriage license. Okay? I want to be very clear on that, because marriage licenses, there are people that come onto this channel and they want to say, well, it's against the law to marry two women. No, it's not against the law in this. It's against the law to have two marriage licenses. But quite frankly, I'd like to tell the state what they can do with their marriage licenses, but I would probably immediately be put off the channel. Okay, but I'm not going to say what I really want to say right now, because I'm telling you guys, it's not pretty. The state needs to stay the hell out of marriages. That's just the way it is. And part of the disaster that we have in our nation today and in Western civilization is because of the involvement of the state in marriages, and the involvement of the state in interposing itself between the man and the woman, and between the man and God. And we need to be very clear. We need to be very clear that the state has no place. The state has no authority there besides what they give themselves. And we as men need to give them the high sign and tell them, no, you have no authority here. This is not your place. This is not your domain. You can stay out. And they need to. In a patriarchal society, if a situation comes up, it should be between that man and the woman's father or covering. And if that man is no longer with us, then the next thing that happens is the husband needs to take the issue up with the elders or the patriarchs in the family. That's the way it's supposed to work. And Israel and God's people are designed to function in a patriarchal society, designed to function in a patriarchal system whereby the wisdom and the strength and the judgment ultimately it's from God, but some of that comes down through the wisdom that can be ascertained through or obtained through the elders and the patriarchs that have been around for a while. So just some brief things there on marriage. There's more that we could talk about, but the biggest thing that I want to make, the biggest point that I really want to drive home is that it doesn't take a marriage license. It doesn't take a pastor. It doesn't take the authority of the state. None of those things are part of creating a marriage. A marriage actually, and here's another discussion that gets a little heated at times. What is a marriage? When a man takes a woman, that sexual union, by some accounts, creates the marriage. What it does do is it creates a one flesh union, but I don't know that it's a full covenant at that point. I tend to lean a little bit towards a sex with intent. The intent is to keep and to have a covenant there and to carry that forward. May or may not be in writing, but the bottom line is the man is good for it. If you have relations with it, you own it, okay? Or if you have relations with her, you own her. She belongs to you. You are now responsible for her. And walking away from that responsibility is a very serious matter in the hands or the eyes of the Most High. So that's something to take into big consideration and recognize that we must be sure that we are fulfilling the covenants and the responsibilities that we have, or we should not be putting things where they don't belong if we're not willing to take the responsibility for what that creates. Some would argue that marriage requires a covenant. I don't see that anywhere in Scripture. There are multiple places where a covenant seems to be implied, but nowhere is there something that says you have to have a covenant. But what I do see is that sexual union is an immediate connector, and that's of significant importance. So all of those things important in understanding marriage, but we need to understand what does Scripture say, not what does the culture say, because the culture teaches tradition that comes straight out of Greco-Romanism and is rooted in pagan law. And that's all I got. That's all I got to say about that. All right, for King and Kingdom, I bid you shalom.